My sister lied and turned my parents against me. They refused to let me in on Mom's birthday. Now they're begging to reconnect after the truth came out. Hey, I'm Austin, and I've just turned 28. This whole crazy situation kicked off last year when I was 27. My family is made up of my mom, Jennifer, who's 54, my dad, William, 56, and my younger sister, Deborah, who's 24. We seemed like a pretty typical family to me. I had a pretty solid job in a city about 6 hours away from where my folks live. I was handling my own expenses, had my own place, and would visit home for the big holidays and birthdays. Deborah and I weren't super close as adults, mainly because we lived in different cities, but we got along fine. Back when she was a teen, she used to be kind of dramatic when things didn't go her way, but I figured it was just a phase. Then everything got flipped upside down when I lost my job. My company was making cuts, and my position got axed. It was a real shocker. I had some savings, but not enough to cover rent and bills for too long without income. I spent a month sending out tons of resumes and going to interviews, but nothing was panning out in my city. So, I had to make a tough call. I decided to move in with my sister. Deborah had a 2-bedroom apartment in another town, also about 6 hours from our parents. She knew I was laid off and offered a spare room at her place. She was super chill about it and said I could stay as long as I needed. It felt like a real lifesaver, so I accepted, planning to cut down on expenses and keep job hunting. I told her I'd chip in for groceries and utilities with my unemployment benefits and handle cooking and cleaning since I wasn't paying rent. At first, moving in with Deborah seemed alright. For the first few weeks, I mostly stayed in my room sending out job applications and prepping for phone interviews. I kept the place neat, did the dishes, laundry, and cooked dinner before Deborah got home from her job as a receptionist. But then, after about 3 weeks, things got weird. Deborah started coming home in a foul mood, ranting about work, her boss, and her coworkers. If I tried to be supportive, she'd snap at me, saying I didn't get it or that I should just leave her alone. I remember one night she was fuming because she got a warning for being late to work again. When I tried to help, she accused me of being happy about freeloading. I reminded her I was helping out with expenses and was actively job hunting. Then she broke down, saying she was overwhelmed. The next day, she apologized, blaming work stress. This roller coaster of behavior kept happening. She'd explode, then apologize or ignore me for days. Her accusations became bizarre, like saying I used her pricey shampoo or lost her mail, neither of which were true. One time, she asked me to move her car, and later accused me of scratching it. We checked it out, and it was this old faded mark. Still, she yelled at me for an hour, stormed off, and the next day acted like everything was cool. It was really confusing. Whenever my parents called, I tried to keep things upbeat, not wanting to sound ungrateful for Deborah's help. But Deborah often talked to them a lot, either visiting or having long phone calls with Mom. After these chats, my parents seemed a bit distant on calls with me. I started to worry that Deborah might be telling them things about me. I had a few interviews for remote jobs and one for a gig about an hour away, but nothing solid came through, and that's where things were left hanging. I was totally stressed out. My savings were almost gone and living with Deborah was getting unbearable. She started treating me like I was her personal errand boy, constantly asking me to run around for her while she lounged on the couch watching TV. It was nuts. I'd be busy typing up cover letters or looking into companies for job interviews, and she'd burst in demanding I drive her to a friend's place or go fetch her dry cleaning or snack cravings. If I tried explaining I was busy with job stuff, she'd flip out on me. Then, about 2 months after I moved in, Deborah lost her job. She came back around midday, sobbing like crazy, saying her boss fired her for no reason. The whole afternoon and evening were a mess, with her pacing and screaming everywhere. I even saw her hitting herself, yelling that her life was over. I tried throwing in some advice, like hey, why not start job hunting again? But she just lost it and turned her anger on me, accusing me of being glad about her misfortune, making comments like, now you're not the only failure in this place, huh? The next day, she was on the phone with Mom, loudly crying about how unfair everything was. With both of us jobless and home all day, the apartment felt like it was ready to explode. Deborah's mood swings were wild. One minute she'd be nice, suggesting we watch a movie, and the next, she'd go silent or snap at me for breathing too loudly. She quit doing any chores, leaving dirty dishes, clothes, and trash all over. If I didn't clean it up, the mess just stayed. Whenever I gently asked her to clean up, she accused me of attacking her or being controlling. She even said I was trying to ruin her life or that I was jealous of her. If I questioned her about it, she'd either blankly stare or just walk out. I was desperate to get out, so I applied for any job I could find, just to escape. I mostly stayed in my room, trying to avoid her. With Mom's 55th birthday coming up and having lived with Deborah for about 3.5 months, the tension was still running high. I hadn't found a job yet, and my finances were tight, barely enough for gas and a small gift. I'd been living off cheap eats, like instant noodles, to save money. I came up with a plan to surprise Mom on her actual birthday, giving her a little gift and heading back the same day. It was a 12-hour round trip, but I figured the effort would show her how much I cared. I decided not to mention my plan to Deborah. I was worried she'd try to stop me, insist on tagging along and ruining it, or even worse, spill the beans to Mom and Dad. The night before the trip, Deborah announced she'd be staying at a friend's place, making it easier for me to sneak out early. I used nearly all my remaining cash for gas, leaving me with about $40. On the morning of Mom's birthday, I woke up at 4 a.m., quickly got ready, left a note for Deborah saying I'd be out, and hit the road. It was smooth driving, nice and empty that early. I spent the drive jamming to music, imagining how surprised and happy Mom would be. I got to my hometown around 10 a.m., drove straight to my parents' house, feeling nervous but mostly excited. I pulled into the driveway, walked to the door, and, even though I had my old key, I knocked. Dad opened the door looking surprised, but not in the good way, more shocked and slightly annoyed. The first thing he said was, "Austin, what on earth are you doing here?" I tried to sound upbeat, holding up my little gift, saying, "Hey, Dad. Came to surprise Mom for her birthday." But he didn't seem thrilled. He stepped onto the porch, half closing the door like he didn't want me coming in, and said, "Austin, this really isn't a good time. You shouldn't have come today." I was totally confused and asked if Mom was okay, if something was wrong. He said, "She's fine. She's." So, I showed up at my parents' place, and my dad was all, "It's fine, but it'd be better if you're not around today. We've got stuff going on." I was like, "Seriously, what's happening?" I could hear people talking inside, and it was definitely my mom's voice. But then, I heard Deborah's voice. Deborah. She was supposed to be at her friend's place. What on earth was she doing here, 6 hours away from where she should be, so early in the morning? Then my mom, Jennifer, came to the door, looking totally exhausted and kind of scared. She opened the door a bit more, saw me, and her face just fell. I was expecting, a bit of joy or surprise, but nada. Instead, she softly asked, "Austin, honey, what are you doing here?" I was like, "I came for your birthday, Mom." Surprise. She glanced at my dad and then at me, saying how she appreciated the thought, but it just wasn't a good day for a visit. Apparently, they had plans, and it was better if I left. There I was, just standing there on the porch holding a little gift after driving all morning. I tried, "Better how? Can't I just pop in for a second to say happy birthday and hand over your present?" Then Deborah appeared behind my mom, with this little smirk on her face, not saying a word. Mom went on, "Austin, please. I just want a peaceful birthday. Honestly, I didn't want you here today." Her saying that was like a punch to the gut. Then my dad jumped in, sounding all firm, telling me I needed to leave, like, right now. I looked at my mom, hoping it was some sort of mistake. Couldn't believe this was how they were treating me after everything. I didn't make a fuss, just felt this cold wall go up inside me. I simply said, "Okay," turned around, walked back to my car, and left. The gift was still sitting on the passenger seat. After driving an hour, totally numb, I pulled into a rest stop, tossed the gift in one of those big trash cans, and then drove the 6 hours back to Deborah's empty apartment. When I got back, it was already dark. I didn't bother turning on many lights. I just grabbed my old duffel bag, threw my clothes and laptop in it. I didn't really have a plan, not much money left, and I definitely couldn't stay there. Then I remembered an old buddy still in the city I'd moved from. Called him up, told him I was in a tough spot and needed a place to crash for a few days. He didn't even hesitate, just said, "Come on over." I left Deborah's key on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that read, "I'm gone. Don't contact me." With just $20 left in my wallet, I hopped onto my banking app and transferred my last $100 to Deborah's account, with a note saying for electricity. I grabbed my stuff, headed out, and drove through the night back to my buddy's place. The next few days were a blur, but my friend was amazing, let me crash on his sofa, fed me, just let me be. Still, I knew I couldn't stay long. I needed to sort my life out. Made the tough call to sell my car. It was in good condition, so I got a few $1,000s for it, enough for a deposit on a tiny room in a shared house in a rough part of the city and some basic groceries. About 2 weeks after desperately job hunting, I took the first offer I got, which was working nights at a massive warehouse loading and unloading trucks. The pay sucked, and the work was brutal, but it was a paycheck, which meant I could eat. My parents and Deborah tried calling the few days after the birthday. I ignored their texts and calls, and by the end of the week, I blocked their numbers. Also blocked them on social media. I was completely done. My own mom telling me she didn't want me on her birthday after I drove all that way was just too painful. And my dad telling me to go, with Deborah standing there smirking. It was crystal clear they didn't want me in their lives, so I decided to give them what they wanted. It was tough just trying to cope. I saved every dollar I could. The warehouse gig was exhausting. I'd come home in the morning as the sun came up, reeking of sweat and dust, and crash into bed. I ate cheap stuff like pasta, bread, and eggs. I didn't socialize. My friend would check in now and then, but I mostly said I was busy or tired. I kept to myself. The most immediate result was that I was totally alone. But in a weird way, I felt kind of liberated from all the family drama. It was like there was this strange, bleak sense of peace. I just went through the motions for about 8 months, working, sleeping, eating, and not much else. On the bright side, I did land a slightly better job after around 6 months. I started doing data entry for a small logistics company, which was a lot easier on my body than the warehouse gig. I was still crashing in the same cramped room in that shared house. The place was noisy, and the neighborhood was pretty dodgy, but hey, it was all I could afford. I did manage to save a little bit, about a couple $1,000. Over those months, I hadn't talked to my parents or sister at all. I just assumed they'd forgotten about me and moved on, which is what I was trying to do too. Even though I still couldn't wrap my head around why they acted so cold on my mom's birthday, I started to accept it as their choice. Then, out of the blue, about 2 weeks ago, I got a message on social media. It was from my aunt on my mom's side. Hadn't chatted with her in over a year, but I hadn't blocked her like I did with my parents and Deborah. Her message was short and sweet. She was worried about my mom. She mentioned there was a lot of family stress but didn't want to spill the details in a message. She told me it'd be a good idea to call my mom. I read it and just ignored it for a few days, didn't feel a thing, no urge to reconnect. Why would I? Not after they kicked me out. But then, a few days later, I got an email from my dad. I knew the sender right away. The subject said, "Your mother misses you." So, I opened it. He said Mom wasn't doing well and missed me terribly. He added something like, "Things were complicated back then, and maybe it was all a misunderstanding." He asked if I'd be open to talking to them. The email was so vague, it kind of ticked me off. I mean, how do you misunderstand getting tossed out of your own home? Or your mom saying she didn't want you around on her birthday? It all seemed pretty clear to me. I haven't replied yet. I'm torn about what to do. I guess I needed to get all this off my chest and see what others think. Would I be wrong to keep ignoring them, even after the email? What could they possibly say that would make things right? Considering what they did, my mom's words and my dad's actions, is there really any point in opening that door again? Update time. First off, big thanks to everyone who took the time to read my long story and leave comments. I didn't expect such a big response. Some folks wondered if I'd left out any major drama with Deborah or if I ever came clean to my parents about how rough things were living with her. Honestly, no. I never sat them down to explain just how bad it was, like the time she smashed a vase or accused me of things for no reason. I'd sometimes mention on the phone that living with Deborah was a bit stressful or we didn't see eye to eye, but I always downplayed it. I didn't want to whine or cause a huge blow-up between them and Deborah. I figured they already knew she could be a bit dramatic, given her history of making big scenes to get her way, but living with her was a whole new level of crazy. It was like she'd morphed into someone else. A lot of you asked if Deborah might have been bad-mouthing me to our parents during those months. Looking back, especially with how cold they started acting toward me, it seems likely. Deborah made a point of visiting them every couple of weeks and had long phone calls with my mom, often behind closed doors. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but she often sounded upset or like she was crying. I thought she was just griping about work or whatever. I never thought she might be turning them against me. Another hot topic was how much I was actually giving Deborah money-wise. When I was on unemployment, I chipped in around $200 to $250 a month for utilities. That was a huge chunk of my benefits. Plus, I bought my own food, covered my phone bill, and took care of my car expenses. For the first 2 months, I cooked dinner for us almost nightly, but Deborah started complaining that my cooking was too bland or not what she wanted. So, I just cooked for myself after that. I did all the grocery shopping for the apartment. Deborah would give me her list, and sometimes she'd toss me some cash for her stuff, but it often wasn't enough, so I covered the difference with my meager funds. I ended up doing all the cleaning in the shared spaces, and trust me, I was often cleaning up after her messes too. I was really trying hard not to be a bother. Some people pointed out that my parents' reaction on the birthday seemed way over the top, like it wasn't just about them wanting a quiet day. I'm with them on that. My mom was so cold, like it was deeper than just being annoyed about a surprise guest. Reading through everyone's comments got me thinking hard. The idea that Deborah had been bad-mouthing me to my parents for months started to make the most sense. Their extreme rejection just couldn't be explained any other way. My dad's email about a misunderstanding kept nagging at me. Even though I was hurt and furious, part of me was curious about what he meant, remembering how things used to be with my family. But I wasn't about to call them and get yelled at again. Then I read a comment suggesting I reply to my dad's unclear email with a short and direct one, asking for clarification. I liked that idea. It seemed like a way to maybe get some answers without much risk. So, after a week of mulling it over and rewriting my reply a bunch of times, I finally sent a short email to my dad. It just said, "Dad, your email wasn't clear. Before I even think about talking, I need you to explain what you meant by misunderstood the situation on Mom's birthday. I also need to know why I was told to leave and why Mom said she didn't want me there. If you can't do that, then there's nothing more to discuss." I kept it all facts, nothing about how hurt or angry I was. I hit send and tried to stop thinking about it. I figured either he'd ignore it or send something angry back. But 2 days later, he replied, and it was not what I expected. He seemed like he was finally laying it all out. He wrote that on Mom's birthday morning, just before I arrived, Deborah had a full-on meltdown in front of them. She'd been telling them all sorts of awful stuff about me for weeks, claims that I was stealing from her, trying to get her fired, and even being physically aggressive. She supposedly had bruises as proof, which my dad now thinks she could have done to herself. Deborah painted me as a nightmare roommate who was making her life hell because I was mad about losing my job. Dad said that on the morning of the birthday, with Deborah in hysterics, they just believed her and felt like they had to choose between me showing up and what they thought was Deborah's safety. He admitted they should have been more skeptical and talked to me. After I cut contact and Deborah moved back in with them, struggling with rent and showing no signs of looking for a job, they started noticing holes in her stories. Deborah even started having major anger outbursts at them, too. So, turns out Deborah totally wrecked her own room in our house during a screaming match just because she was asked to help with chores. She also started sneaking cash from wallets and Mom's purse. When confronted, she either denied it or threw a huge fit. But things really took a turn a few weeks before Dad emailed me. Mom was cleaning a closet and found a box of Deborah's old bank statements from the time I lived with her. The statements showed Deborah was blowing a ton of money on online shopping, clothes, makeup, and pricey takeout, all while telling them I was stealing her money and she was broke. When they found out, they realized Deborah had probably been lying about everything. Dad's email wrapped up saying he got it if I was still mad at them and wasn't trying to make excuses. He just wanted me to know what was up with Deborah. He asked if I'd talk to Mom, saying she was full of regret and cried over me all the time. I must have read that email like 10 times, trying to wrap my head around it. So, my sister Deborah had pretty much destroyed my relationship with our parents. The stuff she accused me of was wild: stealing, trying to get her fired, and even physical abuse. None of it was true. She'd spun this crazy story making me look like some sort of monster, and my parents bought it. I have no clue about the bruises she talked about, but I know I never touched her. The thought that she might have hurt herself to make her story believable was disturbing, but I remembered her hitting her head the day she got fired and throwing a vase, so it seemed possible. I haven't replied to Dad's second email yet. Knowing what I know now changes things, but it doesn't fix what they did. The only reason they realized Deborah was lying was when her behavior became too much for them to handle. Update 2. It's been over a year since my first post and about 10 months since I learned about Deborah's lies from my dad's email. I took a long time to process everything. It explained their actions on Mom's birthday, but it didn't excuse them. They believed terrible things about me because of someone they knew could be dramatic and didn't even let me explain. They chose to think I'd steal and be violent to my own sister. I didn't reply to my dad for weeks. He sent another short email hoping I'd consider talking. Mom reached out too, full of remorse, saying she was sorry for believing Deborah and missed me. She said Deborah was getting help after a bad incident at home but didn't say more on that. Things haven't gotten better with my parents since I haven't tried to fix things. I eventually sent one last email to my dad and asked him to pass it on to Mom. I said I understood they were tricked by Deborah, but not questioning her or trusting me hurt a lot. I told them I needed time, maybe a long time, and wasn't ready for any relationship. I asked them not to contact me, saying if I ever wanted to talk, I'd reach out. I told them their actions, no matter Deborah's influence, damaged my trust. They respected that. I haven't heard from them in about 9 months. My aunt sent a Christmas card saying Mom talks about me and is struggling. I didn't reply to that either. My relationship with my parents is basically non-existent now. What happened on my mom's birthday has led to me cutting them off entirely. Learning about Deborah's lies didn't make me want to go back, it just showed how toxic it all was. I don't think there'll be more updates. I initially shared my story to vent and see if cutting contact was right. The responses and truth helped me decide. My life is quieter now. The hurt is still there but not as intense. I'm focusing on moving forward. Thanks to everyone who supported or shared their own stories. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in dealing with family breakdowns. This will be my final update.